Hey everybody, Steve Ritter, back for time with this little story time with the smoothie here with the Colonel. So I hope everybody's doing all right today. Just got through working out, and I'm trying to steer away from sandwiches a little bit, eat something a little healthier. Well, sandwiches are pretty healthy. Yeah, it's better than like fried stuff all the time, I suppose. But anyway, try a little different flavor. So I was in the Carrefour the other day. Great fruit section and all that. So still haven't worked up to getting spinach. And I know all of you have said that you need to add greens to that. Of course, the ravishing Mrs. Ritter says the same thing. And I hear you. Help is on the way. Soon, baby. But not today. So I found I'm going to try a little something different. Cantaloupe banana. So those are both pretty mild. I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out. I'll put a little bit of a spoonful of peanut butter in there to give it a little bit of protein. So found these nice little cantaloupes. This is half of it because I use the other half. So half a cantaloupe and a banana, a nice ripe banana. It's not real orange like or like the kids like make fun of me saying orange. It's not orange. How do you say that? Orange. It's not orange as orangey as the ones in the States are. This one's a little more pale. This is from Iran. So there's a lot of produce that comes from Iran that they sell here. Of course, Iran's just up that way, just across the Arabian Gulf. Across the Straits of Hormuz. Is that at the Straits of Hormuz? Real close. So, but there's produce here. So I'm going to go with that. I've got some other fruits that I'm going to try. I did get some frozen strawberries, so that's a smoothie coming later. But anyway, the story today, I was going to continue on with some Air Force stories. I'll talk about my first mission in command overseas. And probably one of the best trips I ever took. So I'm going to flip the camera around and I'm going to fire this smoothie up and then we'll go have a chat. So stand by one. All right, here we go. Got the old Kenwood blender ready to go. So I've got half a cantaloupe and one banana. Going to go in here. Whoop. That's what you get for running away. All right. Got my American Garden peanut butter. Never heard of that brand. The only place they sell that's overseas as far as I can tell. So I'm going to go with a big old scoop of peanut butter. This is actually, that's a big old scoop there. Look at the size of that thing. Big old scoop. Big scoop of peanut butter goes in. Can't let that go to waste. I do love my peanut butter. Now, I left my ginger paste at the other place. So no ginger today, but I do have this fresh Laban, and I went back to the full fat. Thank you very much. Don't want to mess with the low fat anymore because this full fat stuff is pretty tasty. So yes, I know I could freeze the bananas and freeze the stuff, and it would be wonderful, delicious, and more frozen-y. I can't wait. I'm hungry. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up. So stand by. We're going to have Raul and his as the smooth as butter band to fire some tunes up. So stand by one. Here we go. Got to turn the switch on. There we go. Here we go. Let's see here now. I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera back around now. Stand by one. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. Banana cantaloupe with a little bit of peanut butter. Not real super thick. Not chunks of cantaloupe. That's what that was. That's good. That's pretty tasty. It's not overpowering. Nothing overpowers anything. So normally I say the bananas are the bullies of the fruit kingdom and kind of take over the flavors. In this case, I didn't. So I did some laundry today. So don't have a dryer. It's like the washing machine. It washes. It's like a low water washing machine, and it'll spin for like an hour and a half, and then it spins, super spins, and so the clothes come out damp. And I got myself a little clothes rack here, and I just hang my clothes on there and let it air dry. So and then like pants and things like that, shirts I'll iron in with an iron. What else would you iron with? Well, I'll iron them out and I kind of iron the water out. So anyway, I guess it's better for your clothes that way. Anyway, talk about Air Force stories. I'll take another drink. Everybody got their drink? Everybody relaxed? So ready for a story? So I started a little chunk of cantaloupe there. Surprise. I started flying the C-17 and I went through initial qualification training, and I finished in October of 1995. And I went to Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina, where I live now, and started there. I was there for 4 years. So typically with the U.S. Air Force, as a co-pilot in a crew airplane like the C-17, like a cargo plane, you start off as a co-pilot and you work your way up to being an aircraft commander, which you're in command of the crew, and you take the airplane and you fly. You're in command. You're the pilot command. It's like the captain of a commercial airliner. You're the in charge of the safety and everybody on the airplane. So to get to that point, you have to build up experience, and you have to have, I think it was 1,500 hours of flight time, total time, to be able to do that. And that's a combination of Air Force flight training, which was about 300 hours, and then another 1,200 hours between the simulator and the airplane, mostly in the airplane. And you had to have a certain number of instrument hours and all that kind of stuff. So you had to have this criteria. When you met that, then you went to, they kind of racked and stacked you, and based on your timing and your experience and everything else and your ability, they would send you to aircraft commander school back in Altus, Oklahoma. So you go back there and you go through that school, and that was about 2 months of time there, where you go through simulators. Basically, you learn how to air refuel the airplane and learn how to do assault landings. So we would do that. You go through that training, and then you get a check ride, and you come back and you think, okay, well, now you're an aircraft commander. No, not so fast. Now then, you can fly the airplane, and you can make the right decisions, and you're mature enough, and you're capable to do most anything in the airplane. Now the big question is can you fly all over the world by yourself? I mean, with your crew, but you're the guy everybody's going to look to if anything happens, right? So then you go through this process called a operational mission evaluation. We call it the OME process. So you go out and usually you'll have an instructor pilot that'll fly with you, and he or she will watch you fly the mission and provide, suggestions and things like that, and help you learn how to run a crew. And it just depends on the mission that you're on. And typically we like to do a mission in Europe and then another one in the Pacific, so that you saw everything and they can evaluate you on what you're doing. And you do 2 of those, and then you would do a recommend ride, and where the instructor, he was overall, or he was in command and had to be in the seat for landings and everything like that. But they would sit back and let you do whatever all the way up until you were going to get them in trouble, and then they would go, okay, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. So it was as close as you could get to running the show. And so went through that. We got through all that fine. Of course, not perfect, but okay, hey, do this, don't do this next time. Anyway, so the last thing that you do is the OME. And that is, you are the pilot in command. You're being evaluated. So you have an evaluator on who doesn't have to be in the seat or anything. He could be, or she could be asleep in the back the whole time, really. but they're watching you and evaluate you to see how you do if you can run the mission. And I got my crew put together. Okay, here's my OME. I'm all ready to go. I've been studying up and everything else. And we got the mission was out in the Pacific. And so what we were supposed to do? We were supposed to go from Charleston, and we somehow had to get to Japan. And I was looking at the mission, and it's basically we were going to deadhead all the way to Japan. Now, deadhead in the U.S. Air Force means you're a flying air crew, but you're riding as a passenger on a cargo plane. So we had to actually we flew. So we had to put all of our stuff. We had to fly commercial from Charleston to California. We were going to launch out of Travis Air Force Base. So we had to fly all the way there to get. I think we flew into San Francisco and then had to take a shuttle bus down to Travis. It took all day, and we get there. And then the next day, there was a mission leaving out from Travis Air Force Base, and that was the long mission that we did. So it was going to leave from Travis Air Force Base, because it was going to air refuel up by Alaska, and then fly all the way over to Korea, to Seoul, Korea. We were going to land there. We had like 3 hours on the ground, and we're going to quick turn and then go to Yokota Air Base, Japan, and right outside of Tokyo. But we were going to do all of that in the back as passengers. And I told the evaluator that. I'm like, oh, that's what they got us doing. And he's like, you're at a failure level. You have to work your way up from a failure to make me have to do that. We got a good laugh out of that. He was a real good guy. Really put me at ease. So I really learned a lot about being an evaluator from watching him and how he handled that. And that's the way I always tried to do it when I was an evaluator. Anyway, so we land in Japan. It was a long day. And then to make it worse is when you land there, it's like the next day from when you left in the evening. So because you lose a day, you cross the date line, and it would really mess you up. Flying to Japan from the west coast of the U.S. was tough. So we land there. Now I haven't touched the stick yet. We haven't gotten the cockpit. We've been in the back or flying commercial the whole way, and then we get okay. Now we're ready. So we get checked in. All right, we're going to get there. We're going to reset, and then our mission that we were going to take out. We were going to go from Japan, fly all the way down, and land in Jakarta, Indonesia, to get fuel, and then we were going to fly to Diego Garcia out in the middle of this little tiny archipelago out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. That was where we're going to go, and that was the plan for the day after. And I ran into some guys that I knew that had flown the jet that we were going to take, because you didn't keep the same airplane. You would get off, and then another crew would take it and fly on. And I ran into the crew, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you're not going anywhere." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, the jet's broke, and there was like the remnants of a typhoon that had come through, so there was like thunderstorms all between." So we get alerted, and here I am on my own. I mean, I was just praying for like perfect, not a cloud in the sky weather, nothing, the less hassle and everything else that I had to deal with. And so we get alerted. I'm like, still broke jet? I mean, so we get alerted, and they're like, well, no, we checked the aircraft forms and everything else, and looked at them, all the write-ups, and there was nothing wrong. I mean, there was something wrong with it, but I'm like going, oh, we didn't have a GPS on the plane. All we had was our internal navigation laser ring gyro. It's like magic. It's voodoo. I don't know, but it uses inertia to tell your movement and where you're at, and it plots your position. It's not as accurate as a GPS, but all of it together is more accurate. But it was accurate enough for what we were going to do. And that was my first big test. And I'm looking at the regs, and he goes, "Can we take the jet?" And I said, "As far as I can tell, yeah." And he goes, "Okay, let's go." And we looked at the weather, and yeah, there was thunderstorms, but there was enough space, because you need, up at the altitude, you need 20 miles. You need to keep 20 miles away from thunderstorms, which That's like the word, other than running into the ground. That's the worst thing is thunderstorms. You don't want to come anywhere near them, right? Um, so we take off out of Japan, pretty heavy, full of fuel, and I had the weather radar painting in front of us, and we're looking, and I'm plotting it all out, and I'm looking for gaps, and we're kind of moving around. We're having to like pick our way through, and we get to one place where in front of us there was two. If you imagine looking at the weather radar, it was two globs of thunderstorms, and then in between there was like a saddle. So it was like two hills with like a little bit of a saddle in between them. That's where we were going. So it was 20 miles here. If right through the middle of that saddle, it was 20 miles to that storm, 20 miles to that storm, and then we were like 3,000 feet above what was in the middle, which was like another brewing thunderstorm there. We're going to shoot the gap and go through, and it was fine on the other side. So I'm looking at this, and we were up at our max altitude. We climbed all the way up to get above that storm, up at our max altitude, and we're flying along, and I'm watching, and we're going like, okay, I think we can make this. And the evaluator's right behind me. And then we start kind of getting into some little bit of shaking and turbulence and all. And I'm like, hey, let's, telling the loadmaster, hey, we'd have some passengers back. Hey, tell them to sit down, strap in, and it's going to get a little bumpy. And then I'm watching and I'm looking through the heads-up display, and my airspeed starts, we're at whatever indicated speed we were at, but it starts dropping. Like we're slowing down. Like the power's still set the same, and it was up as high as it can go. But we were up at our max altitude, and like the engines didn't have anything else to give. Well, we started running into warm air because thunderstorms pull that warm air up, and it gets sucked up into the sky. That's what it's so crazy, into that cold air and that hot air and the warm air mixed together, and it's just like a witch's brew of hate and vileness there. And so the temperature, it's the warm air is getting pulled up, and it starts and the higher the temperature, the less compressed the air molecule, the thinner the air is, and it's effectively like we were climbing higher and higher because the air is getting thinner because it's warmer. And I'm just watching my speed. The power's all the way up, and I'm like, I don't want to go down towards that saddle. And I'm staying there, and then we start kind of getting the airplane's kind of shaking, and then all of a sudden, it's like somebody was taking handfuls of slush and throwing it on the windshield and shaking. I'm like, okay, all right, we're gonna just get through this. And then the plane starts going stall, because we were right at the stall margin. I mean, we had just razor thin margin. Well, hitting the turbulence like that, it was just and it was just, I'm just going, and the evaluator finally spoke. He goes, we need to get down. We need to get lower. And I'm like, yeah. And I just come to that realization. That's the way I remember it anyway. But I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. And I said, hey, tell center we need lower flight level 310 now. And all right, that's approved, no problem. So I start down, get into thicker air. And it was not a big deal. We kind of got through that, picked our way through that, and then for the rest of that trip, telling you, I'm like, there was no other weather for the rest of the trip, but that rest of the trip, I'm like eagle eye, just looking, searching the horizon for any cloud. I'm like, if I see a cloud, I'm like, we're gonna go. I didn't want anything to do with any weather after that. That was the first leg. We had deadhead all the way there, and then coming out of there with a broken jet that we were limping around the Pacific, dodging thunderstorms and all of that. And so we flew down, and I've never been to Jakarta, so we landed Jakarta, got fuel. I remember that because whenever we landed and filled up, I mean, we carried 180,000 pounds of fuel, and figuring a gallon of jet fuel is about 6 pounds. That's like 30,000 gallons at, what was it at the time, $1, $2 a gallon. So it was a big financial boon for some of these airports for a big airplane like us to come land and fill up. And I remember the guy came, picked us up, and he was going to take us over because we had to file our flight plan. And he's the coordinator, and he goes, so how much fuel do you got? I'm like, we need to fill it up probably 30,000 gallons. And he's like, oh, that's a lot of money. Like, yeah. And we flew with little credit cards. that would charge an account, and that's how they would pay. It's just like a gas card. That's what we flew with. It was just kind of neat. Fuel cards, we called them. You landed in the Air Force, you had like a couple of, it's like your wallet. Fuel cards, you had your Air Force ones. Whenever you landed at Air Force Base, you used the Air Force fuel card. And then when you went anywhere else, you had a different fuel card. And I've heard stories that guys landed before and they wouldn't take either of them, and the guy had to use his own credit card to buy fuel. And I'm like, going, man, imagine the points you get from that. Anyway, so that was my first big, and then that was my OME. I passed it fine. We flew from there to Diego, and then we flew from Diego. We flew up to Fujairah, which is where I did the fishing trip a couple of last month. We flew into there, quick turn, came back, and then came back around back to Japan, and then I was done. They needed me back because I had to turn right around after I passed, which I did pass, and I had to go to airdrop, aircraft commander for airdrop school. I had to turn right around and go to another school. So that was 1998, and that year I think I was gone about 260 days out of that year. I was gone. So, and we went anyway. So I finished AC airdrop school, came back. My very first mission in command was actually an airdrop mission, which is pretty easy. You just fly up. It was a Halo mission, high altitude, low opening. You fly up, open the doors. Army guys look out and jump off the back, like you see, like the Mission Impossible movie where they jump out, which is actually out of C-17. Was that the one they filmed in the one that was in Dubai? No, that was the last, not the last one, but the one right before that, I think, where he jumps out of an airplane, a Halo drop. I think maybe it was the last one. Anyway, there's guys here, they that was out of a Emirati C-17, that movie. And they got a lot of the guys, I talked with a lot of guys that flew with him, say he was a real nice guy. Anyway, Tom Cruise. So, my first overseas mission in command was me and a crew. It was Saddam Hussein, when he was still in power, was starting some stuff. This was in late '98, and we got tagged to go. So they like, hey, we got to launch the fleet. We're gonna do all kind of stuff because Saddam Hussein was starting some mess again, and they were planning to bomb them or something. I had a bunch of B-1s lined up down in Oman, and we set up a stage. We would set up a bunch of planes and an operation there. We'd fly into there, and then from there we would go to downrange, down to where we needed to go, down to Oman, and that was out of Sicily, and Sigonella is a Navy base there in Sicily, and so this is my first mission. So we show up, and I'm all excited. They're like, okay, you're in command, and we show up, and I'm looking at what we're carrying, and it was like hazardous cargo. It was like explosives and nasty stuff or whatever I think we were carrying. Well, I'm looking at the places we're going, and specifically it says you can't come here with hazardous. And I'm like, hey, guys are like, in the stage are like, just go, we're at war. Which I learned another lesson there. It's like, no, that's the rules are there for a reason. Even in war, you need waivers for that. You can't just ignore something, push it off to the side. But we landed in Sicily, and by the time we got there, we were kind of on the tail end of all the big effort to get out there. So they hurried up and launched everybody out there, and planes and back ends full of crews, deadheading. Remember, I was talking about that, deadheading a bunch of crews. Well, we were fortunate enough to actually fly there. So, young AC, and we got to fly there on our own. And there was another friend of mine who, she was a young AC too. So between the two of us, we were two young ACs together, and then we had a kind of a younger co-pilot. And so we landed in Sicily, and we're like all hitting the ground, ready to go to get put and set up for a mission or whatever. And they didn't even have room for us there. All the planes were there. Everything had stopped. Nothing had happened because Saddam had like backed up, and they're like, okay, well, what are we gonna do now? And so everything stopped, and they're going, oh, okay, well, look, you're gonna have to go someplace else. They were gonna send us to Rome, which would have been cool actually. But we landed with like just above minimum fuel. We just squeaked in there, and we're like, we either need fuel to go, or we got to stay here. So they were able to move some planes out of the way and made a spot for us. And we show up, and they're like, okay, are we, set us up for a mission? Whether, and they're like, there's nothing going, there's nothing happening, and we don't even have a room at the hotel where everybody's at, which was just off base. The Sig Inn was the name of the place, and that's where all the aircrew were. And at the time, that was like, this was late '98. And they're like, we don't even have room for you there. So you have to stay down in Catania, which is on the southeast coast of Sicily. And okay, all right. So I'm like, what do you want me to call in, get set up, whatever? Like, don't even worry about it. Just call us in a few days. So we're like, what? I mean, which is that never happened. I mean, usually they kept pretty close control over you. They're like, don't worry about it. Give us a call in 3 or 4 days. Like, okay, you got it. So we get there and we're like going, this is great. I mean, when does this ever happen? And we're like, we got to take full advantage of this. So we rented a car, and there was 4 of us, and we just headed out, and we drove up the east coast, or the east coast of Sicily, around to a place called Taormina, and you can look that up, Google it. But it's an old town. But there's an old Greco-Roman amphitheater there that they still have plays and stuff there, which was really cool. We got to see that, had lunch there, just tooling around Sicily. And we came back, we drove, there's a road that kind of goes up the side of Mount Etna, which is an active volcano. Now it is. Then it wasn't anything going on, but there was smoke coming out of it. But there was a road you could go up, and there was like a little, I guess they had a ski resort there or something, but you could go. We got some hot chocolate there and hanging out on Mount Etna, and then drove back. And I mean, it was cool. That was like one of the coolest trips I went on, because it was just we could do whatever we wanted to do. And then they ended up bringing us back. And you remember what I was talked about what I used to tell my kids about being easy to love? Well, that was another case where that really came into effect. We were like they had the stage managers, and stage managers are always grumpy because they're the ones that never get to fly. They're managing all the crews, and we just made a point to say, look, wherever we need, whatever you guys need, if you want us to go in this, you want us to do that, whatever you need, we're here for you. We're easy. Nobody's got to be anywhere. Nobody's got to do anything. We're all good. Whether it's tax-free or not, we're all good. And they made a point to go, okay, well, here you go. You're going to get to go downrange and get and it was nice because the way we flew, you could get a tax-free. So you fly and you land in a place that in a combat zone, or over a combat zone, or around, or within the particular zones that are identified as combat zones. As aircrew, it's tax free. It's a month of tax free, and we were able to get that, and then came back and then deadheaded home. But that was it. That was my first mission in command, and that was a good one. That was a tough one to top. That was we had a lot of fun on that one, and it was good, and it was a big confidence booster for me. So anyway, I'm going to finish up my smoothie. And hope you enjoyed the story. I kind of got a little long-winded here, but I got all riled up. Got my dander up telling that story. So hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next story in smoothie time. Take care.